Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Pete Hebert. I'm Executive Director of MassEcon, and I just want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We're getting started a little bit late, but we'll fly through this program, I think, without too much difficulty. A lot of people to thank here, and we'll be doing that throughout this program and at our later event, our MassEcon Summer Reception. Want to thank the wonderful people here at Polar Park for making this space available to us. It's a wonderful venue, and we appreciate that very much. We're going to be hearing from Tim Murray in just a few minutes, providing some welcome remarks. The Worcester Regional Chamber has, whoop, there goes the bottom. Hold on, let's see that. I can't cover up, don't cover up the bottom of the microphone. Future speakers, keep your hands right up there. The chamber has been a wonderful partner for us in putting this event together, so we're very appreciative, Tim. I'm gonna ask our sponsors of the spotlight to come forward and just say a few words of welcome as well before we introduce Tim. So if I could have Chip Norton and Tiffany Gallo from Cutler come on up, that would be great. We really thank them for their support for this event. So with that, Chip, you're here first, so you could go first.
Well, thank you, Peter. Thanks a lot for having me. Hear me okay? We're honored to be a sponsor of this event today here at Polar Park. And we're really very excited about the Central Mass Economic Recovery. I own Mercantile Center, and also we're in charge of the redevelopment of One Mercantile, a former Union building. And I'm happy to say, as we're coming out of this pandemic, we're seeing a lot of strength in the office market. Renewed interest. I wouldn't say we're pre-COVID level of activity, but very strong activity coming up, which bodes very well for the commercial downtown office market in Worcester and Central Mass.
Thank you, Chip. Tiffany.
Hi everyone. Just first and foremost, it's so nice to see everyone here in person today. Also excited being a Worcesterite. As much as I love being at the Seaport or in Boston for our summer reception every year, I'm really excited to be hosting you here in my hometown and to see the growth. Worcester's also Cutler's hometown. We've been here for about 50 years. Very proud to work with some of the great residents, including WPI, Reliant Medical Group, closest to here, the Harding Green Worcester Public Market. So with our team of architects, builders, pre-construction managers, we're excited to see the continued growth of Central Massachusetts.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you both very much. Again, thanks so much for the sponsorship. We couldn't do it without you. In a couple of minutes, we're going to be hearing from Bob Cox. Our other sponsor, of course, is Bowditch, and we're so glad for their support for this event as well. Bob will be joining us as our moderator, which will be interesting when you have one mic that works. So we'll see how that, Bob will be able to make it happen. But with that, I do want to introduce our partner with this event. Again, so many thanks to Worcester Chamber, Regional Chamber for helping us pull this together. So ladies and gentlemen, Tim Murray.
Thank you, Pete, and appreciate the opportunity and the chance to work with MassEcon and your team. We have found them to be great partners over the years in my different roles, not just at the Chamber, but as Mayor and as Lieutenant Governor, and the fact you're here today, I think, just underscores that. There are three words that we use to kind of frame our work each and every day at the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce, and it's in our logo: recruit, retain, incubate. And I like to think that into the recruitment bucket, the presence of the Worcester Red Sox in Polar Park, our Exhibit A, of our efforts to kind of really go anywhere and any place to make the pitch of the value proposition that exists here in Central Massachusetts. Certainly Worcester drives the regional economy, but it is a region that we compete. And and it is a true region. And we partner with a whole bunch of groups and organizations and chambers as well in Worcester County in a variety of different ways, but a whole host of organizations and institutional partners. And really as a benchmark that back in 2013 when I started the chamber, working with our then board, we moved forward on a pretty in-depth study of the economy of the region, and working with April Anderson. Many people remember April from her time in state government, but also her private business where she works with different municipalities and groups and organizations. We put together what is called we called then the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce Economic Competitiveness Outlook Report, and it really benchmarked us in terms of where we were and where we were going. And as evidenced by our panelists, who I think really will tell the story, one of the real strengths that we have in this region is that we are diverse. We have a number of sectors that are strong and growing, and that complement one each other, and that allows us, I think, to make our way through both the good times and the bad times. And it's something that I think you'll hear about in this discussion. A lot of good things happening, but we have challenges in some of our sectors as well. So I'm looking forward to the panel. I get the chance to introduce my board chair.
And he will do that. In my eagerness to get the program running, I forgot that I have about a 4-minute presentation to present before you do that introduction. So I'm going to ask you to pause.
Why don't I introduce him now?
So as I was saying, this is the first live event we've done in 17 months, and so it's clearing the cobwebs out.
Well, you're going to introduce him, but I just have, so we're saving time. We have time, but Bob Cox is going to be our moderator. But thrilled also to have him as the chair of the board at the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce, and does a phenomenal job. So I'm going to let Bob come right up after so we can stay on time, and Peter get to the slides. But thank you for coming to Worcester. I just want to, we have the reception after, but we got a number of members of our chamber team here. Peter Dunn, Chief Development Officer, anything we can do to answer questions that you have about the region, the city, and anything we've done or our opportunities that may exist, we want to be a resource. Here you go, Pete.
Thank you, Tim. Very little bit about MassEcon. Not everybody knows who we are in the state. We're part of the state team, Team Massachusetts. If you are a member of Team Massachusetts, one of our partner organizations, can you raise your hand right now? I see a bunch. This is a great team to work with in Team Massachusetts. Our job as an organization is to help promote and champion Massachusetts as a great place to locate businesses. And really the focus of these spotlights, being very careful with this microphone, the focus of these spotlights, and this is our fourth, so we've done this is now our fourth region. We started our last live event, in-person event, was actually at Gillette Stadium on February 27th of 2020, and then the world changed, and we're glad the world has changed again more favorably. But this is really sort of the central question we ask at each of these spotlights. What are the advantages to being here in central Massachusetts? So we're in the agenda there. The existing reports, the different comprehensive economic development reports already in place here in central Massachusetts. Again, thank you to our sponsors. So when we look at central Massachusetts, this is roughly it. Found this map. This is about right. We have sort of the shoulder of the 495 communities, some of which are in Middlesex, and we go out to the Quabbin and then north and south to the borders. So very familiar when we think of central Massachusetts. When you look at this area, we have a million people, just under 1 million in population. That's a large population, half of whom are in the labor force, 38% with a 4-year college degree, and another 8.8% with associate degrees. Those are still far ahead of the national averages. Just under 39,000 business entities, and of which 597 are 100+ employee entities, and 21 are 1,000 plus. Looking at some of the existing reports that are already out there, manufacturing, education, health services, professional business services, agriculture constitute 50% of the employment in Worcester County. A lot of important things highlighted: quality of life, infrastructure, especially in the central and southerly parts of the region, and important assets in terms of strong business client location and also the incredible higher education and hospital assets. So building on that, we decided to look, all right, we were talking about manufacturing, for example, being one of those. This is not too complicated, hopefully, a slide that talks about high concentration, there it goes. It's gone, folks. Let's try that one. It's back. Plugging away here, okay. So basically, a location quotient of 27%, of 27 means you have 27 times the employment in that industry than you would expect given the number of residents in this region. So that's an incredibly high concentration, and that suggests a really strong industry here in the region. So that's abrasives and product manufacturing. We know who the prominent employer there is. But then some of these other industries, analytical laboratory instrument manufacturing, 19. That's 19 times the number of employees in that industry, in this region, than you would expect compared to the nation as a whole. Things like research and development biotechnology, 3.9 times. And so these are and then some traditional, more traditional industries as well. Machine shops, 1.29, and pharmaceutical preparation, semiconductors, other plastics product manufacturing, 4.5 location quotient. So that's again 4.5 times the employment. Greater than the employment that you would expect given the population. So that speaks to very strong, robust industry. And everything sort of marked in that green there means that those concentrations are increasing, not decreasing. So that, again, speaks to the vitality of those industries. And looking back 12 months, ending at the end of July, these are the leading, in terms of what we call export industries in central Massachusetts, the leading employers in terms of job listings. One that we didn't include was Amazon. They had 7,000 job listings in central Massachusetts over the past 12 months. That doesn't mean there's 7,000 new jobs at Amazon, but it does mean that they have listed jobs 7,000 times. Some replacement jobs, some new jobs, certainly. But this certainly gives you an indication of who's hiring. And all of these industries, these companies are represented among those industries that we just talked about being high concentration industries. And then again, on the healthcare and higher education side, again, very robust hiring there in terms of those industries. And finally, just in terms of what we do at MassEcon, we're involved in site location services provided to the state. That's what really sort of our core deliverable as an organization working as part of Team Massachusetts. What we're seeing in the central region, 23% of all our projects this year have a focus on the central region, and that is different from past years. So we're seeing more activity in the central part of the state, and so that's a big number for us. We have 48 Massachusetts assisted projects to date in 2021. And finally, Chip mentioned the robust commercial market, and this attests to that as well. So the line you see is the availability rate in terms of industrial office flex. That is going down, less availability, and those are the bars are rent. Rent is going up a little bit, and so if you are in the development community, well, that's sort of what you want to see. If you're in economic development, you want to see more and more of these properties come online and made available as well, because there's an increasing demand. So these are all good things, and it sort of supports some of the things that we already know about the central Mass region. So with that, let's get to our panelists. We heard from Tim, thanks so much. And now we're going to catch up, and we had an introduction of Robert Cox, managing partner. He is going to take over, and Bob, good luck with this microphone. I hope you do better than I've done this microphone. I know it'll work. Maybe it's a magic touch to do that.
Can only go up from here.
We can only go up from here. And I'll also ask our first panelists to also come forward and join us. Chris Crowley, Deborah Jackson, John Weaver, and Bruce Glassman. Please take your seats.
Just keep it up. That's the message. Well, I'm glad you gave it. Sort of sorry it was an afterthought. The number of projects you're working on here in central Massachusetts is up to 23%. Yeah, I know there's the rest of the state that like to see you that up even further. So welcome everybody. Welcome to Worcester and welcome to Polar Park. If you have not been to a game yet, I would urge you to come. It really is a lot of fun. Minor league baseball is lots of fun. There's things happening all the time, and Polar Park's a great place to be. So let me get started here. We have two panels that we're presenting this afternoon. First is our industry panel, and what I'm going to start by doing is ask you each to introduce yourselves, and then I'll come back and ask you some questions. And I think we're working with this.
We're going to try this one? Give it a go.
Try it.
You want to go first? Testing. Nope. Switch. It says it's on. Testing. Oh, there we go. Anyway, my name is Bruce Glassman. I'm the CEO and president of AIS. We're an office furniture manufacturer in Leominster, Mass. Leominster is about 25 minutes north of here, and we make everything for an office, whether it be traditional panel systems, collaborative furniture, ergonomic accessories, seating, laminate case goods. Anything that you would need for an office, we make right in the Leominster facility. It's 600,000 square feet, and we employ 800 people in the factory, most in the manufacturing sector. What I think is kind of unique, and I've heard it mentioned a couple times already today, is that business is actually booming, even though it's office furniture. We're back to pre-COVID levels of activity. Certainly we're suffering the way everybody is with raw materials and sourcing and supply chains. Getting people, we have like 50 open recs. There's a lot of open jobs in our area, but there's a lot of opportunities. We have employees from over 40 different countries from the diversity standpoint, and on our factory floor, we have 300 women working on the factory floor. And before I turn it over, I guess the most unique part is, in my opinion, is that we're doing traditional manufacturing right here in Massachusetts, Central Mass, in a state that's really known for high tech and biotech. And I have to tell you, I'm sure we'll hear it as we go through the presentations today, you can manufacture in the state of Massachusetts, and you can do it very successfully. And we're really a testament to that. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody.
Hey, John.
What was the mix? I know. We thought we had that figured out.
Off the bottom. Off the bottom.
Hi, everyone.
Hold up the side there.
Up top. There we go. Maybe? All right. Hi, everybody. I'm John Weaver with Massachusetts Biomedical Initiative. So MBI is the state's longest running biotech incubator, founded here in Worcester, Mass. And really an outshoot of Tim in the chamber at that time. The city of Worcester wanted to capture the development opportunities that resulted from the siting of the UMass Medical School here in the city, and MBI became a force with the chamber and WBEC to help see that through. Today, MBI is home to 58 early stage life science companies within our 4 sites across the city. We opened our most recent site with support from the Life Science Center and Mass Development in August of last year. You never know how a project will go, especially building on spec in the midst of a pandemic. But we're now about 95% full at that site with about 2 years ahead of schedule. So the demand for startup companies and the demand for biotech growth in the city is extremely strong. And we continue to partner with our regional partners on how do we continue to grow that. Worcester is an area that has for a long time had a demand problem when it came to biotech. We've now really transitioned over to having a supply issue, and we need to work with our development partners to try to get some new biotech buildings going here in the city to make sure that we can continue to fuel that growth. The last 9,000 square feet of space in the city was just taken up by one of our graduates up at the biotech park. So we're eager to partner with the development community to see new construction get going. In addition to incubating early stage companies, MBI also serves as an economic development advocate, working with the chamber, WBDC in the city to support projects like that. and also runs a workforce initiative called Increasing Diversity in STEM, where we try to build a broader pipeline into the STEM workforce, and are also focused on creating last mile workforce connections between our academic partners and actual opportunities in industry. So that's a brief summary on MBI. I'm really happy to be here with everybody tonight.
I'm Chris Crowley, and I'm from Polar Beverages. We're another startup company. We've been here since 1882. My family, I'm fourth generation, and we have a whole bunch in the fifth generation coming up. So this is home to us. Worcester is truly home, and we live here, we work here, and I've spent. I started working at Polar when I was 11 years old, inspecting bottles, those old glass bottles. You learn the facts of life. A mouse jammed inside of a bottle. It was all, returnable refillables, and you don't want to take somebody else's trash and refill that, because I learned the facts of life the hard way. But we've been around forever, and we've been very innovative. And we've spent a tremendous amount of capital here in Worcester. 18 months ago, we put a new can line in, and we outgrew that, so we commissioned another. It's about a $30 million CapEx project, and we have another can line going. We're bringing in 300 million cans from Mexico. You talk about supply chain issues. Every commodity, everything we buy is in a disaster. If you look at aluminum last year was 75 cents a pound. It's $1.47 right now. So we've had 4 price increases this year on our average stuff. And our customers understand that stuff is real. And we're very lucky. We're plugging away. Polar brand is growing. It's now a national brand. We have 14 factories through the Keurig Dr. Pepper business producing our products in California, Portland, Oregon, Texas, Florida. So we're taking a next step. And my brother Ralph is very instrumental in that. I think donates his liver to this thing every night. He goes out so much and entertains so much, but he's doing a great job, and we're plugging away. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am the Reverend Dr. Deborah Jackson. I'm Dean of the Business School at Worcester Polytechnic Institute. Now, since no one else followed the directions, which was to just introduce themselves and pass the microphone along, then why would I do anything other than what they did? So, WPI, as you know, was founded in Worcester in 1865. And it was a recognition that this was a great place to educate a workforce that was teeming and booming, but we wanted to do something different than just have the theoretical education. We wanted to have theory and practice, give people an opportunity to apply what they were learning in the classroom. So John Boynton and Ichabod Washburn started those 2 twin towers that we know as WPI today, and we are still educating individuals with that same mantra of theory and practice after all of these years. We have more than 6,000 students from all over the world and a workforce of more than 500 employees, and we are delighted to call Worcester our home.
Wow, after that, I'm ready to sign up for WPI.
We'll have someone right here to take your name.
Well, you may be wondering why we have these businesses, and they are businesses here. And it is to provide you with the diversity of those businesses that are here in Worcester and Central Massachusetts. We have a manufacturing facility or business that has 800 employees, the largest in Leominster. We have MBI in the life sciences that I remember when it first started, that has grown significantly, and you heard what John described that is happening. We have a WPI, which I didn't know went back to the last century, but what a wonderful thing that WPI is doing here. But it's also a business, because you're running a business school and you need to hire people to come in to work at the school. And then Chris at Polar Beverages with over 1,000 employees.
1,800.
1,800.
Not all here in Worcester.
Okay.
Yeah.
1,800 employees with many in Worcester. It's a major business. So the question I have for you, and the question that you know is coming, we're here in Worcester. We know Worcester's a great place to be and work. But what is it from your perspective that brings in employees, makes it a marketplace that we can pull people in? And I'll start with you, Dr. Johnson, since you look ready.
We've always found that Worcester was a perfect place to be. It's right in the middle, in the heart of the Commonwealth. It is an educated community. It is a diverse community, interested in learning and growing. It's been a place that's been open to all kinds of technological endeavor. And now that we're in this fourth industrial wave, where the focus is on technologies like blockchain and fintech and biotechnologies, biomedical services, the Internet of Things. This has been a place where we've been able to grow and truly have a beachhead. So it's just continuing upward from there.
Great. I'd have you pass the microphone along. Same question.
Same question. So one of the big advantages we have in Worcester is freight. We are an importing state. So when you think about Polar, every 5 minutes we make a trailer load of soda. So that's 250 truckloads a day that we have to send somewhere in New England or somewhere. And the freight lanes leaving Worcester are probably less than half the cost if you're going from Allentown, Pennsylvania up here. So freight rates have gone up 30% in the last quarter to us, but they've gone up more to our competitors. So, and you think of the traffic, Boston, when Coca-Cola had their plant in Needham, it was a disaster. Drivers go out at 5 in the morning and they get stuck in traffic before they make their first stop. We have 90, 395, Route 2, Mass Pike. We have just a perfect network of transportation. So that's an enormous advantage to us. And I think another giant advantage is you think of the support you have in Worcester. We had a disaster a couple years ago, and I got a call on a Sunday. We're going to be down for a month. Our water treatment tank exploded. It took out all the electrical. It was just catastrophic. And I said, call RH White. And those guys were there that Sunday, and we were back up Monday evening. And my guys were sure it was going to be a full month of catastrophe. Cutler, who was the supporter here, they built our first warehouse in '94, and they were just so professional. We have such support from a machine tool standpoint. When we have sanitary welding that needs to be done, we have to fly people in to our Georgia plant or our New York plant. We have guys here that just do it, that are so skilled. You can't believe the skill sets that we have available to support us. Brian Lombard for pumps, so we're very lucky. Dead Mike.
Seems to always fall on me. But that's, so I guess in biotech we think about this just a little bit different, and I think part of that is that we think of ourselves as being part of the greater regional cluster of biotech in Boston and Cambridge. I'm giving up on this. Can people hear me okay? Yes. So we think of it as we're part of this regional cluster. And as such, it's not Worcester or Boston, it's both, and how do we play an important role complementing the local cluster? So I'm going to steal a couple lines from some friends in this, but one is, a lot of people say how far away Boston is from Cambridge, and oh my God, it's almost 3 million inches away from Boston. And that sounds like a lot, but it's really only 43 miles. And that's shorter in distance than San Jose is from San Francisco, which is the Silicon Valley of the West. So we have an opportunity here to really create Silicon Valley of the East along this Mass Pike corridor, and have each part of it play a really important role in that. And now, why is Worcester important? What is Worcester's part of the role? For us, and I'll steal a line from our friend Paul Wengender, who founded Blue Sky Biotech and then Greater Good Imperial Brewing, who is on tap in the right field corner. Stop by on the way out. Which is access. Worcester is a very accessible community. You can access talent, you can access great institutions, you can tap into amazing academic institutions like the REB and WPI. You can tap into collaborations. You can work with government. People from different industries can jump on a panel and have these types of conversations. A very collaborative city as well. So Worcester offers really significant access, including access to affordability, which we intentionally put last. Because while it is more affordable, we also think it has an incredible value proposition that comes before that.
Thank you, John.
Best of luck.
Is it working? Okay, there we go.
I'm going to get rid of this too. Can you hear me? Yes. Yeah, I would agree with what the three other panelists have said. One of the things that has been very advantageous for us is the fact that we're only 1 hour away from downtown Boston, 1 hour from Providence. So we have, and we do a lot of business in the city, obviously. We have, within that 1 hour, have an incredible access to airports, because we do have, we're an international company, and mostly in the United States, but we have access to a great airport. It has a great shipping port from the standpoint of if you're bringing containers and raw materials, some of the best healthcare institutions in the world, as well as some great hospitals here. But I think people mentioned as well, not only WPI, there are other great institutions or higher ed institutions in the city. But if you need to get to Boston, it's 1 hour away. We're just a few hours away from New York City, Philadelphia, places like that. But the best advantage to it is more and more people cannot afford to be in these major cities from the standpoint of your workforce. So they're starting to move out into the suburbs. They're moving into central Mass. They're finding that homes, because everybody wants to own a home still, obviously, and interest rates are extremely low. They're finding homes are about 50% and maybe even 70% less than some of the places in downtown Boston and Cambridge and Newton. And the same thing with your commercial spaces. As you look to relocate, whether to build a building and own it, or whether to lease a space, you're going to find those rates are going to be half and maybe even more from the standpoint of less than what you're going to see in downtown Boston. So it's a great place, and we have a lot of access to employees that want to work and want to work hard.
Bruce, let me pick up on that theme with others, and that is access. I'll come back to, but really it's the housing, the affordable housing that's here in the region. Can others comment on that in terms of the workforce you're able to attract, and how it's connected to housing, to be able to bring people in? Comments and thoughts on that?
I'm happy to talk about it from the bio perspective, and I just think there's a couple interesting. So workforce is dominant in biotech. As companies are looking for where they're going to locate in biotech right now, there's two things they care about. The first one is speed, and the second one is workforce. And so we're talking about this every day. And I think one interesting story. If you're trying to sell Worcester and you're trying to get people out this way to get excited, bring them here. Because nothing sells Worcester like being in Polar Park and feeling the youthful energy and excitement around that. So we did that recently. We brought a company that was interested in Worcester out to see Polar Park, get excited about the community, and said to the gentleman, what are your concerns? He goes, well, I'm just a little bit worried about hiring. I said, well, where are you from? He said, oh, Rutland. I go, well, how many of your coworkers do you think are also from Rutland to Marlboro? And he goes, oh, well, probably a lot of them. I go, then why are you worried about workforce? One of the greatest workforces in the world is in this region already, along 495 in Metro West and throughout Worcester County. So how do we tap into that? How do we get some of those people to take a commute this way, which again helps Boston because it offloads some of that demand, some of that traffic. And then on top of that, how do we then create programs that help bring the new people into that opportunity as well? So how do we create some of these programs that help bring people into those entry-level positions to make sure that we can be successful on that level too? So, we're not worried about workforce. Frankly, amongst our companies, most of our companies find Worcester as an asset because they're able to offer, potentially less salary, but it's more attractive because they're cutting an hour out of people's lives every day, at least, by offering them a commute to Worcester instead of a commute east. So, this is just a way that can be an asset to them. And we can kind of leverage this whole economy and make it grow from a Massachusetts perspective, have all of the assets of the Commonwealth be successful.
Great, thanks, John. Chris, do you have some thoughts on that?
On the real estate equation, we're lucky
to
we
get
have
good workers connected to the
I mean,
housing
our
stock.
workers, we have a large immigrant workforce, Hispanic and a lot of Africans from Kenya. We have big continents, but they are all homeowners, and they're very, very proud homeowners. So it's their first generation, some second, but they can afford a home and the American dream, and they are living in it. And you take so much pride in the way they feel about the city and the way they take care of their homes. So we have, you know, I've seen waves. Years ago, we had a bunch of Cubans that showed up, and they were incredibly hardworking and highly educated. And some of them moved on to big jobs. And we had a lot of Jewish Russian immigrants that came in the 90s, and they were pretty good. But the Hispanic population we have now is just, they want to work and they want to succeed, and they're homeowners. You think back to the 08 and the scams we had with all them, everyone was a mortgage broker, and we saw such a disaster looming. Half the line supervisors were selling mortgages on the side, and you really, I mean, it was terrible, and you know, it was a looming disaster, and it happened. So you have to keep it real, and that was too good to be true. So and Worcester is real. So
Worcester's real. Dr. Jackson, is the academic world any different in terms of having a housing stock to be able to attract workers?
Oh, absolutely. So I'll stand up.
Okay.
But I'm a Baptist preacher, so I don't usually have problems projecting.
I'll get out of your way.
But we're looking at hiring faculty, and they want a place to come. They want to be able to own houses just like everyone else. And then we hear from faculty who are coming from away. They've heard about the Boston market and think that, well, the housing stock must be the same. We've got a new faculty member who's on her way from Denver right now and was excited about being able to find a home. We have a new dean who just purchased a home in this area and was excited to be able to find a home. And then the other aspect that I would say, sort of going slightly off from the academic side of it, because I'm an economic development commissioner in my own hometown, you think about housing stock and being able to have people come up through the housing stock. Worcester still has multifamily housing stock. That's a foothold for immigrant communities to come to buy and to be able to rent the additional units, to be able to build up equity and then move forward and up in home ownership. Worcester still has that to offer. So it is a great place. It is a destination city for many of our immigrant populations who need a place to come and to work. And so it's very exciting to be able to attract folks to a place like Worcester.
I'm going to get you on the chamber. All right, so you've identified some features here that we see in Worcester. Access, a workforce, combined with housing. What else? What are some of the other things?
One of the things that I find is the cities and towns in Central Mass are pro-business. You're not going to run into the obstacles that you'll find in downtown Boston. You're going to find, whether it's the mayors, whether it's the chambers, they're going to welcome you. They're going to find a way to make it work. And if you need incentives, you need tips or STAs, they're going to find a way to work with you to get you to come to Central Mass. And I really find that pro-business is really important. And it's the reason that we're in Leominster, Mass, as opposed to Mississippi or Mexico or Texas or something like that.
yeah, I remember the general manager of Polar Park, and he was talking about permitting. His last 3 jobs were in downtown Boston. And he said it was such a pleasure dealing with Ed Augustus and the whole permitting process. He literally would get a permit that day, where you have to hire a consultant to get your permit in Boston. It's impossible to do business in that community. It's really ugly.
So we got that down. We got that right.
No, we have
We got that right.
we as a city have it down.
Yeah.
We have they're entrepreneurial. The city manager, that form of government's very effective. So Ralph and I are very happy with Ed and the way the city works.
Good. John, you have some thoughts on this? What else?
Same kind of theme. I guess my predecessor Kevin O'Sullivan would always talk about Worcester has this collaborative gene. It's just in the DNA, and I think it's a community. It's a region that likes to work together, likes to see things get done, likes to project manage them. And frankly, I think Worcester's in a place right now where it's had a value proposition like it's never had before. And I think we need to get out, all of us in this room, get out and help tell that story and let people know about it. Because this is Worcester's time, and I think right now we're in a pretty significant development cycle, and we want to make sure we capture it. So I'd ask everybody here, be collaborative. Let's all work together. Let's figure out how we do that, and let's get some new buildings going. Let's get some new businesses out this way.
I'd like to stop there, but no.
I have to plug, because we have 13, 14 colleges, universities right in Worcester. We are producing thousands of graduates every year that need a reason to stay right here. We are educating people who are leaving because they're not finding necessarily the right opportunities right here, and we can change that in this room.
All right, so we have a little bit of time left with our industry panel. Any questions that you have that you want to put to folks here? And if so, raise your hand, speak in a clear, loud voice, and identify yourself.
My name is Sue Mailman, and my question is actually to Bruce and also maybe to Chris about vocational and community college students and how your firms are, how many they're hiring, and what kind of opportunity there is through that pipeline.
Well, there's some great training programs in the state. We are working with a lot of the high schools as well as a lot of the voc schools in Central Mass. And as things are coming back online, because they really came to a standstill obviously over the last 16 months, we're getting more and more involved again. So we do have mentoring programs and we do have training programs within our organization, and we hope to continue to expand those as well.
We have about 130 open jobs right now, and we've been hiring maintenance personnel. It's very, very difficult to find somebody who can turn a wrench and is willing to do it, because it's dirty, hard work. And it's unfortunate the vocational school, that's the best school in the city, 97% of the kids go off to college and they don't go into the trades. I don't know if you're seeing that.
Can I just say that's kind of bullshit? So what happens?
What do you really mean?
Especially our students in Worcester, right?
Yeah.
They might say, I'm gonna go to Quincy, I'm gonna go to Worcester State, I'm gonna go wherever. And I'm telling you, because I've served on apprenticeship in construction for over 20 years, they're coming back to those jobs. So even if they say, I'm gonna leave and go do that, they're oftentimes coming back to our industries. And the answer, Chris, to me, is just more access. And we're doing that in Worcester with after-school programs, trying to bring kids from other programs and expanding to the other high schools as well. And we need Polar and AIS to hire these kids.
You take my card when we're done. I can hire 40 people tomorrow.
All right.
You can talk later. You can talk later.
Just Sue, if I can just comment on it too, I guess I'd say if there are employers in this room who are struggling with entry-level workforce, you owe it to yourself to reach out to the folks at QCC. You owe it to yourself to reach out to Drew Wayment at the Worcester Public Schools, because they're doing some incredibly innovative programming. In fact, we're working with them on a partnership right now around biomanufacturing, where we might be able to get people right into the biotech industry out of their programs as well. They're creative, they're flexible, they'll work with you. Just pick up the phone, and I think you'll be surprised at some great resources there.
All right, I think our time has expired for our industry panel. Please thank them very much for their... And we're going to do a quick change out here to bring up a new crew on economic development. And I'd like to ask each panelist to give us a brief introduction of who they are and their business, their organization. So, if you want, you can try.
Good afternoon. So I thought I had solved this problem because I parked on Water Street and you can hear this event on Water Street, so I was hoping the microphone would not work for this panel. Everyone on Water Street. Because I won't say anything inflammatory, I promise. So, now you know, I am Roberta Bryan, Worcester Business Development Corporation, Vice President of Projects. I'm thrilled to be here with MassEcon, and we are a private nonprofit real estate development organization. We do God's work. Anything that the real market, private market won't touch because it's dirty or too expensive or there's contaminated buildings on it, we'll do it. We'll raise our hand. So thank you for having me.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Meredith Harris with the Marlboro Economic Development Corporation in the great city of Marlboro. Our job is to sell and promote the city of Marlboro, attract and retain business. We work very closely with our city council, and shout out to our mayor, Art Division, who's here in the audience today, to bring companies in, to keep them there once they're there, and make sure that Marlboro and Central Mass is the best place to live, work, and play. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here with MassEcon. I'm also a board member, so really excited to be here with you all today.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Peter Dunn. I serve as the Chief Development Officer for the City of Worcester. And in that role, it includes housing development, business development, special projects. It also includes the Worcester Redevelopment Authority, which owns this facility, as well as Union Station. And I've been with the city for 8 years, and really happy to be here this afternoon. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Roy Nascimento. I'm the President and CEO of the North Central Massachusetts Chamber of Commerce. And I also have the honor of serving as the President of our Economic Development arm, which is the North Central Massachusetts Development Corporation, as well as Visit North Central Massachusetts, which is our destination marketing arm. And we cover 27 communities, or I should say 26 communities, plus the former Fort Devens, basically the northern part of central Massachusetts. We go as far as the New Hampshire border, and then east to Groton, Ayr, Shirley, that area, and then as far south as Clinton, Sterling. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So why these economic developers? Well, what they have in common is that they have a mission that's around economic development. They've been part of various local and regional economic development initiatives, and they are active promoting this region, the geography for business development and as a business destination. So let me ask the same sort of broad question that I asked the other one. I'll go down the line if that's okay with you. So what do you see from the economic development front, the advantages of being here in this region? Oh, Bert.
I would say our greatest advantage, and I think it was touched on earlier, is our built environment, certainly our access to infrastructure. Almost all of our properties, almost all of the land in Worcester is served currently by infrastructure, so we are ready to go. So from a development perspective, we have a great number of sites ready to go, ready to be built upon, already served by infrastructure. I think our regional benefits can be very similar to any other region in Massachusetts. Everyone has cultural amenities, everyone has infrastructure amenities in terms of transportation. I think one thing that Worcester and maybe the Worcester County brings is a personnel infrastructure. And in speaking specifically about the city itself and the city staff itself. City staff touch every development project in Worcester, from a single housing construction to a biomanufacturing park. This facility in particular, without the city, without the professionalism as well as DPW and the planning staff, would not occur. And while that sounds general, it's critical. It's critical because, as someone had mentioned, I think Chris Crowley earlier, without a great staff behind you, these projects will languish. The reputation will become that Worcester can't be developed in, that permitting won't happen quickly, that there's no cooperation, and that can't be further from the truth here. So I think one advantage to Worcester is certainly its personnel and its attention to detail and its pro-business mentality with all departments that gets things in the ground.
Agreed, and I think a lot of things have already been talked about. You know, we can sit here and talk about access to talent, access to infrastructure, access to people, and you know, we've got some of the greatest schools that are right here at our fingertips, and you can, I say all the time, you can get there from here. You know, but not only that, but we also have great recreation opportunities, and people out in central Massachusetts are not on top of each other. You know, you can come out here and you can go on the walking trails, and you can leave for lunch, and you can do those sort of things that you can't do in Boston or Cambridge. I used to work in Cambridge, and I think one of the biggest changes or things that I saw different when I came out to Marlborough was, again, that business-friendly attitude. Just keep going. But I consider myself extremely lucky. You know, I used to work in Cambridge, and again, it was very difficult to get things done. And to have a community that had a negative vacancy rate and didn't need companies to come into their community, that is such a different viewpoint than you have out here. You know, I now work for an administration that wants companies to come in, values what companies bring to your community, understanding what that does for your residents. And it's just such a breath of fresh air to be able to sell a community that, you know, puts their money where their mouth is. You know, we were able to offer incentives, and you know, the mayor, when we go out to companies, gives them his cell phone number. If you have a problem, call me. I think that is a huge, you know, benefactor for central Massachusetts, Marlborough in and of itself, but the business-friendly community and atmosphere, I think, would be the biggest thing that central Massachusetts has going for it.
Thank you. Likewise, I think a lot has been talked about on this topic already, but a couple of things that I would add.
From my perspective, just some comments on like some really smart decisions that I think were made over time, and I'm not going to take credit for them because they were made before I was involved. But I think the city and Worcester Redevelopment Authority's decision to restore Union Station in the late 90s was really critical. So we talk about, you know, Worcester's central location, not just in the Commonwealth, but New England. If you had a defunct train station sitting there, I don't think we would see the kind of fruits of that we're seeing now. And I would add that we've been working with MBTA to improve upon that now. Just today, MBTA released a bid for the Center Platform Project, as we call it, which is another $40 million investment into that facility to expand upon the commuter rail service from here to Boston. And I think that's just smart growth, as John was talking about. It's not just Worcester, it's really about the Commonwealth and the corridor. And so I think we're only going to be stronger as a Commonwealth and a corridor if we improve that access on the rail. So really pleased to see that project is moving right along. And then also with the Worcester Airport, you know, it was a struggling municipal airport for many years, and then thanks to the leadership of Tim Murray, we were able to sell that asset to Massport, and we've seen the great growth that we've seen at that airport because of Massport's involvement there. So I think those were some really smart decisions that we're starting to bear the fruit of today. And then the last thing I've mentioned on workforce, workforce has been talked a lot about with the colleges and the local community. But if you look at the population trends from like 2010 until now and compare Worcester to Providence, Hartford, Albany, Manchester, Worcester's outpacing all of those. And so you're seeing that people are also voting with their feet. So I think we've been trying to create an area that does have great quality of life that's really bringing that workforce here. And so I think companies are going to follow that because we're actually creating that talent pipeline. So those are just some comments that I would add to what's already been said.
Thank you, Peter. So I'm going to try this, see how it works. Oh, great. All right, I'll just try to project. So I would agree with the other panelists. The only thing I would add is the same that you heard from the industry panelists as well, is the affordability in central Massachusetts and north central Massachusetts. All the data that we have, and I pulled some numbers, you know, we're seeing a lot of companies and we're seeing a lot of people that are moving from the greater Boston area that are coming out to north central Massachusetts because of that affordability, because of that quality of life. You know, great schools, you know, and I have some data here that we pulled. We commissioned a report, and average industrial and office lease rates in north central Massachusetts are typically $4 to $8 less per square foot, and residential rates can be as much as $1,000 less per month. So, you know, that's driving a lot of the growth that we're seeing in north central Massachusetts. People are starting to recognize, you know, the great quality of life, you know, the affordability, and everything that we have to offer that, you know, they talk to you about. And partnerships, you know, great partnerships, very business friendly, that Bruce alluded to. So,
thank you. So, Peter, you mentioned this, the investments that have been made here in the region, going back to Union Station, talking about the airport. I'd like to ask the rest of you, what other key investments have you seen that have made a big impact on economic development. Meredith's ready to go.
Hello? So I think the easy one would be talking about investments in infrastructure and all these things, but I think really kind of the unique investments that have been made in Marlboro in particular, we've spent a lot of time thinking about amenities and different types of things that are going to attract and retain employees in your community. Some of you may have been, I know we're in Polar Park, but Apex Entertainment, which is also in Marlboro, which has been a huge driver for business to come into our community because they're able to attract employees because of things like robust amenities. That's a private investment that was made in our community, which has really helped kind of drive the ability to bring in employers to Marlboro. When we go out to talk to companies, the question is always, how do you...
Keep going.
All right, that microphone works. But the number one thing you hear, is what keeps you here, or what's going to make sure that you stay in our community, and it's always about the employees. So we really tried to shift our focus to be, continue to make investments in infrastructure and sewer and water and sewer, all those things that you need for biomanufacturing and all these things to be possible, but also tried to take a look at these amenity-based opportunities, and how do we make sure that we have restaurants and we have different things for the employees to do, because that's a big part of what drives a company to make a location decision. We're also making investments trying to be creative, because we're almost forced to be creative in terms of transportation. Marlboro, right before the pandemic, we launched a shuttle bus that was going from the Southborough train station to Marlboro into our business park to drop people to and from. The benefit of that was our residents could jump on in the morning. We were bringing them to the train station, bringing them out to Worcester, push them into Boston, but we were also capturing folks coming from both Worcester and Boston right there. So I think, again, going back to being business friendly, Bruce, those are the types of things. You have to be innovative, and I think that we really have that, and we're able to be creative and do those types of things.
Thanks.
So I would say Worcester's investment in its downtown certainly was a catalyst, starting with 145 Front Street, going through and demolition of remnants of the mall that existed that were really a barrier. Redevelopment and renovation of the Hanover Theater as a catalyst for that neighborhood. 332 Main as a historic renovation of housing. So I think Worcester really did focus on its downtown, showed that it's walkable, showed that it has space for amenities, that it's safe, that it has great access to the train station. I would add, I think what Worcester's also doing a great job with is from a social perspective. Its most vulnerable population, which I think when everyone visits a downtown, no matter where it is, whether it's Marlboro, Worcester, Northampton, we see a very vulnerable society that no one really wants to look at. But that does have a huge impact on its downtown, on its employees, on how employees feel safe, going between businesses, going to retail, going to restaurants. And Worcester is addressing that. They're addressing and helping and reaching out and solving issues around homelessness, around panhandling, around drug overdose. We're not shying away from that. We understand that people do want to live in Worcester, send their children to school in Worcester. It has to be safe. It has to be diverse. We are a very diverse community. We do not look around today and see our diverse community, but we are a very diverse community. And another item that Worcester is addressing in one of our major hospitals is addressing is diversity. How do we show employees who want to come here to work that we are a diverse community? Are we showing that in our marketing material? Are we focusing our marketing material on diverse and ethnic restaurants and churches and hairdressers? And why aren't we? What can we do better? Because our talent is in our diversity, and because we have a very diverse sector population, we should support that and recognize that they're an excellent workforce opportunity when we all are working together.
Right. Skipping you, Peter. You get to go last because you gave the preview.
So
from
North Central Massachusetts, from our perspective. All right, so from our perspective, in North Central Massachusetts, we've seen a lot of investments, public investments, transportation investments, like the other communities that was mentioned. Our airport, we've seen a runway extension at the Fitchburg Airport, a new terminal, a new 24-hour refueling station that was added there, streetscape improvements in the downtown. In our cities, Fitchburg, Leominster, and Gardner, there's some really cool stuff that's happening in the downtown to help revitalize those downtowns.
So keep your eye on those 3 communities. There's some new housing projects that are coming up. I think we heard earlier about housing is really important, and so those projects are going to be very important to the future growth, not only for our region, but for the state as a whole, as we see more people coming out. I'd also have to mention, Devens. So Fort Devens, the former Fort Devens, is here in central Massachusetts and north central Massachusetts. It's a one-of-a-kind, it's not really a community, one-of-a-kind kind of place. There's nothing like it in the state. Managed by Mass Development, and they've done a great job really turning that Fort Devens, turning it around over the years. And some great new companies coming in, some exciting developments happening there that really have implications for the entire state. A new $500 million life sciences complex, SMC, medical device company that in North Central Massachusetts based, expanded in Devens, and they're continuing to expand. And Nitro is expanding in Devens. So a lot of great stuff happening there that has implications for the entire state as well as North Central Massachusetts.
I'm glad you mentioned Devens. It's important. Peter, assets, investments that we make. You identified a few. You've heard a bunch more. I know there's others. Can you fill in the gap? What haven't we talked about? What hasn't been identified?
Well, sure. So I talked a little bit about Union Station and the airport in terms of transportation. Roberta mentioned downtown, which I think was really important. And it started with planning for economic development, so making sure that you're investing in that planning effort. It started with the master plan as a public-private partnership that then turned into a mass development TDI district, which is now a business improvement district. I think you're really starting to see the benefits of all that to create a sense of place downtown. But I think what's really important that we don't talk often enough about, and it was mentioned in the earlier panel about the schools, is the investments that we're making in our public schools. So South High School, we have many comprehensive education schools in the city, and so South High is going to be opening this semester, and then we've already started on Doherty, which is another one. And so if you add just those 2 schools together, everybody talks about Polar Park and $160 million, but if you add the cost of those 2 schools together, it's about 3 ballparks. So I think that, it shows that our priorities are where they should be, and thanks to obviously the school building authority picks up some of the tab as well there, but massive investments there, and they're already talking about burn code next. So I think that's going to really help us attract families, make sure that we have a quality educational system to put them through. And then on another note with quality of life, since the city manager's been in his role, we've spent over $70 million in our public parks. And so I think that's really added to those amenities that were described about in our neighborhood. So when you do want to purchase that first home, you want to make sure that you have a good school system. You want to make sure that you have a nice neighborhood park to go to. So I think we've been making those thoughtful investments and continuing to make investments in things that people don't see. It's not sexy investments, but our water sewer infrastructure, critically important. We have really high quality water and sewer capabilities in the city of Worcester, and those are all underground, so you don't get to see the pretty pictures of the buildings and everything else, but really supports all the work that we do. So I think all those things are really important. And even now in our time of growth, I think we're taking a thoughtful step back, and we've just, we will be announcing the consultant, but we did an RFP recently for a master plan for the city. We're calling it a citywide long-range plan, because master plan is not the greatest terminology these days. Nobody has the master playbook for everything. But I think that's going to be really helpful, because we've had these, district plans, whether it's the theater district or down in Maine South. We've had a strategic plan for the Worcester Public Schools, a strategic plan for the city at large, and really trying to bring those things together and look at other elements that our zoning ordinance is out of date. So looking at what updates do we need to make to the zoning ordinance? Should we go to a more form-based zoning code that has a little bit more in terms of design review kind of criteria to make sure that as we're creating this new built environment with a lot of the investment that's happening, that it is an attractive place to be as well. So those are just a few other pieces that I'd add.
Thank you, Peter. So let me look to you now for some questions that you have for our panel. And sir, that'll be you with a hand up. Why don't you stand up, say who you are, and speak in a loud voice.
How is Worcester solving the homeless problem? Because California would like to know.
Everyone hear that? How is Worcester solving the homeless problem? Because California would like to know.
I can take a stab at that. So I think it goes to what we've talked a lot about, which is our collaborative gene. You can't solve it alone in government, that's for sure. You can throw all the money you want at the problem. If you don't have people doing those wraparound services, making connections with people, getting them into the programs that they need, it's not going to work. So one of the things that we had done a few years ago was the city manager launched in partnership with the community a Housing First task force, knowing that getting folks into stable housing is really that first objective. And out of that, we've had a number of units come online. We have some in the pipeline right now with the Worcester Housing Authority, and we leverage federal investments that we can to bring that forward. So we get certain entitlement grants from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. More of that came with the CARES Act. They put more money through that in the CARES Act than we typically see in like 5 to 7 years. So we usually get about 350 to 400,000 in what's called Emergency Solutions Grant each year for homelessness, and we got over $3 million through the CARES Act for that. So that's unprecedented, where you could really make a change. So we're putting that to good work, and then we've also just recently announced the launch of an Affordable Housing Trust Fund as well. So we don't have a Community Preservation Act designated in Worcester, but we're going to use some of the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan funds, to initially capitalize that. So the moment was now to do that, knowing that we don't have a CPA yet, but we can take some of these federal dollars that we're getting and put it into affordable housing. So, but a lot of it goes to the great nonprofit community that we have here, Open Sky Community Services, our Commissioner of Health and Human Services, Net of Compassion, you know, all the folks that are really connecting at a grassroots level with the community. We all need to be at the table together, because government's not going to solve it on their own.
But it's largely public housing you're talking about?
Public and subsidized housing. Not all Worcester Housing Authority. Some of it's owned by nonprofit agencies as well. And we've actually been trying to connect with landlords. There's a number of units in the city that are just vacant. They're, you know, existing housing stock. They're vacant because a current owner doesn't want to do the code upgrades that they need. They don't want to de-lead the unit. So we're trying to connect with those folks to say, you have existing housing stock that we need to bring online. Can we help you out with some of the resources you need to make those code improvements? And so we're trying to move the needle on a number of different fronts.
I think California should look to Seattle, because I think we stole the model from Seattle, which was the micro units, partnering with a private developer in the Main South area to allow homeless people to live independently and alone, which a lot of times for mental health reasons is where they're most comfortable. So that was a model taken from the West Coast. We hope to have great success here.
And you run shelters too?
We know me, but yes, there are nonprofits that do run shelters, both for domestic violence as well as homelessness in the city.
We can fill you in later. That's more details, more questions. Question here.
How are you handling the pandemic, and where do you see your cities and towns going in the future?
How are we handling the pandemic, and where do you see the cities and towns going in the future? Who wants to take on that?
I'm not handling it. I can tell you that.
So are we through with the pandemic yet? No, is it going back? We're not ending the era?
Yeah.
No, so I mean, I think in Marlboro, we really tried to get boots on the ground and talk to our business folks, make sure that our small business, you know, had access to resources. We put together a grant program where we gave over $133,000 to our small and local business folks. You know, really tried to work hand in hand with our large business community to find out who's doing what and where and when, you know, who's coming back to the office, who's not coming back to the office, trying to think ahead to get in front of some of those things. But in Marlboro, we've really set ourselves up for success post-pandemic because of the life science cluster that we've been able to build. A lot of the companies in Marlboro, Quest Diagnostics, Boston Scientific, Cytiva, GE Healthcare, the list goes on and on, they never stopped through the pandemic. You know, those were the folks that continued to be coming to work, and they were working on, you know, vaccines and talking about all different types of things. And the biomanufacturing is the next, it's booming. That's what's coming, that's what's happening. And so we're really trying to work closely with developers or current landowners that are looking to expand and to really capitalize on that market. And again, I think the cluster and the work that was laid pre-pandemic has positioned Marlboro to be in a really good position post-pandemic, whatever that may be.
Anyone else? Go. Roberta, second thoughts?
No, I don't. First thought. First thought of the day, Bob. No, I just want to add to that Merritt's exactly right. What we've tried to do is lay infrastructure to those sites that did not have public infrastructure exactly for that, for biomanufacturing. In Worcester, for our new park, the Reactory biomanufacturing park, and we're excited as well because, you know, we've
2/3 Marlboro's full. So they're jumping right over and landing in Worcester. So we have done that preparation and that work as well. And I would agree with you that looking to our larger employers and looking to our office space and saying, how do we reuse this and how do we potentially position it for when things change and the market changes, what else can we offer?
Can I just add one more thing? I mean, not to say we are open for business, it's still a space, but just one additional thought, hiring, right? So we do a bi-weekly podcast at Mass Hire on today to talk about staffing. And that's, I think, one of kind of the quiet crisis, maybe not so quiet anymore, but really trying to lend a hand to our employers to help fill the positions that are open. We saw the slide earlier today that was showing who was hiring in Central Mass. I think if half, if not more, of those companies were in Marlboro. And so we really are taking it upon ourselves to work with our schools and to work with our state partners to make sure that our employers are able to find the help that they need. I think September 4th, that might be a little easier, but trying to be a resource to people and the employers in our community to make sure that they continue to find the help they need is critical.
Roy, I think you had something you wanted to add on the pandemic issue.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is, based on research that we actually had conducted, we know that the region, I think central Massachusetts as a whole, is really well positioned, to take advantage of. We know we were well positioned to take advantage of, the pandemic and any changes that may come out in terms of where people are living, how they're working, where they're shopping. Just because of some of the things we talked about, affordability and quality of life, and if people don't have to work close to Boston anymore, then they can afford more home out in North Central Massachusetts and a greater quality of life. So, and we know, for example, on the tourism side, we actually saw more visitors come out to North Central Massachusetts. The people in the cities were trying to get out, and they didn't want to get on a plane and visit, Florida, and we were a close destination where they could go, and they could go to a park, or they could go skiing, or go fishing on a lake. We have all those amenities. We have a lot of open space up in North Central Massachusetts. So, we believe we're well positioned.
Great. Again, the only thing I would say, reflecting on it, I think one thing that the mayor and the city manager did really well here was the first thing they decided to do was come out and do daily press conferences, because they knew there was just so much uncertainty, some fears, people didn't know what to happen, and they said, well, we're going to give you all of the information that we have and do these daily press conferences. And I think people really felt reassured seeing their elected and appointed officials on TV every day, giving them updates, telling them what they knew. And then going back to the point about kind of homelessness assistance, we were one of the first communities that opened up temporary shelters in our public schools because the public schools were closed. And because of that, we did not have one outbreak in any homeless facility in the city. And that was really critical, being our most vulnerable population. And then the last thing I would say, obviously, we leveraged a lot of different federal resources, the CARES Act and things like that but we've certainly been a little disappointed on the outcomes of the SBA programs, getting to the folks that really need it most. Many times English as a second language in terms of those owners that can't fill out these government paperworks and can't access that. They don't have a team of bankers and accountants. And so we did 1.9 million in small business grants to the community, and it was 59% minority owned, 43% women owned. And we usually do small business grants on a yearly basis with CDBG, and we do about 150,000 in a whole year, and we did $1.9 million in about 40 days. And that was to the point on, I appreciate my staff as well. A lot of us were working 18 hours a day, answering emails at 1 o'clock in the morning, getting that money out as quickly as possible, because we knew these people didn't know how they were going to pay their rent. They didn't know if their business would exist the next day. And so a lot of that was just real dedication from staff across the board and in our public health division and really across the board kind of handling that. So.
Well, we'd like to continue, but all good things must come to an end. So please thank our panel for their thoughts and their participation.
Also, our moderator, he did a great job. Bob, thanks so much. I just want to emphasize how important these panel discussions were to us at MassEcon. What we do at MassEcon with our huge amount of marketing dollars, and it's not a huge amount of marketing dollars, but what we do, what we focus on, a corporate site selectors, both global, national, corporate site selectors. It's a very particular, nuanced group of target group. These are folks that work on behalf of companies to help them find locations around the world. And in marketing to them and in talking to them, what we heard is Boston is a great brand. It really is. When you say Boston internationally, it is an effective brand for Massachusetts. You think sophisticated, you think highly talented workforce, you think of the colleges and universities. Boston is a great brand. However, the other end of that cutting edge sword is they also know it's high cost, and that is an issue that we have. And so when we talk to our corporate site selectors, what we heard was, we also want to hear about your regions. We know about Boston. We need to know more about your regions. And so that's what this conversation is so helpful for us at MassEcon. As we do our marketing and as we really talk about the distinct regions within Massachusetts and what the competitive advantages are for the central region, this discussion really informs that, and it will bear results in the future. And so very thankful for this panel and the past panel, and to Bob Cox for moderating. And I want to thank again our sponsors. For those of you who only registered for the Spotlight, we're very glad that you attended. We also want to invite you to our summer reception. Typically, the MassEcon summer reception is for members only. Today, we consider you all members of MassEcon and our community. So we invite you to stay. We'll kick that off really right now. We have food over here. I hear there are drinks available at the bar. You may also have a drink ticket that our sponsors helped us buy for you, so you should have a drink ticket as well. So please stay, mix and mingle, networking. And we have also a short speaking program as part of the summer reception that includes Ken Turner, the relatively new president and CEO of the Massachusetts Life Science Center. We look forward to hearing from him. So with that, again, thank you all. Thank you for coming. Please stay for the reception, which really starts now, and we'll have a short speech.